we're going to start out with Holly. Holly, are you up for this? There it is. Does that look like your chart?
That's it.
That's it. Okay.
Yes.
Well, why don't you start talking and tell us about your chart and any medical things that you're willing to reveal that you want to talk about. Yeah, this is medical.
Okay. Okay. Well, when I was 19, I quit driving at night because it just was very difficult to see. I wasn't able to do it anymore and feel safe. And I would say at about probably 15, 16, when we would, be out walking around the neighborhood after the sun went down with friends, I started holding on to somebody's arm because I would walk into trees or miss curves and get hurt. So at about 20, my parents thought it was just so strange that I didn't have night vision. So I went to an ophthalmologist and was diagnosed with a degenerative retinal disease called retinitis pigmentosa. And they told me it would eventually lead to blindness, and night vision loss is the first part, and then the peripheral vision would slowly kind of move in to a type of tunnel vision. And then eventually just have very little vision or, total blindness. So the first time that I really was wowed by astrology was in Seattle, Washington, and I was about 28 or so, and I walked into a bookstore, and an astrologer named Alice Lane just looked at an ephemeris, and the second question out of her mouth was, "Do you have constriction in your rectum?"
Right.
And I said, "Why do you ask?"
Now, Holly, don't tell us, don't give us any astrological diagnosis yet. Just tell,
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So then, at about in 2008, when Neptune was on my maybe I shouldn't say that.
In fact,
I became legally blind, and I had these special equipment that I read with, and I surrendered my driver's license completely. And I had been doing all these years some limited daytime driving. So that was a big kind of loss. It was difficult. So that is it. And then, about 3 years ago, I went to Canada and had some Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and actually got a little bit of improvement. I'm still legally blind, but the painful glare is gone for the most part. It's very subtle now, and I have with adaptive technology, and I use a stick in unfamiliar places, a white cane, or I hold on to my husband. So, but I'm happy that I'm better and, partially sighted, and so that's my story.
okay, that is a fascinating story and fascinating chart. And of course, Michelle, who's here at the table, instantly, it only took us about 3 words out of your mouth for us to figure out, you've got a classic configuration in your chart. So, but I'd like to see what everybody else thinks. I wonder, how can we do this? If let's see, all audience. Why does it? Let's see. We could start with. Well, first of all, who thinks they see something in the chart that would be indicative of Holly's condition, besides Michelle?
What I can see. Hi, Holly. Thanks for that. That's very interesting. The thing I can see, obviously, is the Mars moon opposition.
Right.
The 12th house.
Exactly. So how many? Actually, I would have loved to have taken a poll, but I'm sure a lot of you probably saw this right off. That she's got that's a classic eye seeing problem. That moon opposition Mars, and of course Mars is in the 6th house, which probably adds to the fact that, I mean, just having a planet in the 6th house doesn't necessarily mean. Well, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. It's tricky how you interpret the 6th house, but anything in the chart doesn't have to be in the 6th house, can indicate a predisposition. So Holly, now, Holly, tell us. Yeah, and so that's classic, and I'm sure a lot of you out there saw that right away. Did somebody say something? Okay, Holly, tell us, if you've got any information that you've gotten from your analysis or from other astrologers about that condition.
Well, I didn't know astrology well when I met with Alice Lane, and I believe she's passed away. I'm unable to find her. So, but this is kind of what I thought about it. The ascendant being Aries, ruling the head, and then looking for the ruler of Aries, Mars, there in the 6th in Virgo. And then it's quincunx Saturn, the planet of constriction, up there in the 11th. And it's forming a yod because Saturn is sextiling Jupiter in Aries and sextiling the ascendant and forming, and then quincunx Mars and forming a yod, and then kind of the center point of the outer part of the yod, not the point, is the moon there. And so just the Saturn seems to be kind of a restriction there too. And then Mars, well, I'm not sure, I'm not real great at medical astrology, but I also just kind of look at the ascendant there, Aries, and the ruler Mars, and then I look to, okay, Mars is in Virgo, so that is in Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, is there in the 4th house of genetics and heredity and inherited disease, and this is a genetic inherited eye disease.
Right. Yeah, and that's an interesting thing about the 4th house, that inherited thing. I have read that. Now, the yod or yod that you're talking about is the Saturn and the Jupiter both being in conjunct to Mars, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Now,
and then there's another yod there between Mars and Virgo and its ruler Mercury down there in the 4th, and it's there, the Sun Mercury conjunction is quincunx Saturn.
right.
Sextile Mars and Mars. So there's a couple yods there too.
Okay. Now, so are you familiar with? I'm asking Laura and Michelle. Are you familiar with a yod or yod?
Yeah, it's sometimes called like the hand of God, and that the singleton planet is the one that's supposed to be a key to how to use that energy.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
what I know about it.
Okay. Does any now? What about the pronunciation? I thought it's Y-O-D, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was
Yes, I
pronounced
think it's
yod. It said both ways.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else got any comments on? Well, let me go down. Alice Marie, if you've got any comments on this, you can unmute yourself.
Michelle had another interesting comment.
Oh, she did?
About just the moon opposed Mars.
Well, yeah, I mean, that, you were outside.
Oh, the moon, oh yeah, that's the
yeah,
basic,
that-
we
that's
said
the
that's the classic,
For vision?
yes,
Mhm.
classic configuration for vision problems.
Okay. One thing that
And,
Go ahead, Holly.
okay, I was just gonna say, and can you explain that so that can make sense? I mean, I kind of see the sun and the moon. I know the moon is one, the male eye. I mean, the moon is kind of the feminine, the left eye, and the sun is the right eye. Or I've heard that. I don't know if that's what Hermetic astrology teaches, but I've also heard that Mercury also has to do with vision. But in Zane's teaching, it's kind of the moon Mars opposition that has to do with vision, or moon, the connection between the moon and Mars.
Well, yes. Now, why that is, I can't tell you. But
Okay.
I've read it lots of places, and Zane talks about it a number of times as being vision. I mean, if you look in the Stellar Healing book, I'm pretty sure. In fact, we can look that up here. Okay, Ray.
I'm thinking of all the signs and what, as the sense of smell, I think it's ruled by Scorpio. But sight is which sign? I am just trying to recall, and I'm thinking of, how we have IC, and I'm thinking of IC as Sagittarius, but I'm also thinking that the sight is Gemini. Is our sight ruled by a specific sign?
Well, I can see where somebody might get that. I'm not familiar with Gemini. In fact, I'm not sure I've ever read any place where there was a particular sign or planet that ruled vision, except that I've read lots of places that the moon and Mars have a lot of influence over the eyes and vision. That's the
Yes,
extent of my
absolutely.
knowledge.
And that's in our Stellar Healing book on page 159, says the eye trouble of the Mars and Moon. So I've been looking at that.
Okay. Well, show me where that.
But just in Stellar Healing on
What chapter?
it's your eye trouble. It's on page 159 of Stellar Healing.
Well, but that it depends on what. Give
Yeah.
me 3 or 4 exact words, and I'll find it.
Do you want this book?
Birth chart constant. Under eye trouble, moon severely afflicted.
Does it say eye trouble?
Yeah, under eye trouble.
Eye
Yes,
trouble.
eye
Okay.
Paul,
Yeah.
if I wasn't chained to this laptop with my earphones on, I was going to get this very first astrology book I ever got, because it had this beautiful diagram of the facial features and all the signs rulership. I might just run over and grab it, because it was a really old drawing, copied into this old astrology book.
Well, why
That's
don't-
the only place I can see.
What, Renee? Why don't you just? Well, we won't be able to see it unless you can get it on your screen.
No, but I can look at it and
Yeah,
tell you what it says.
and you can maybe send us a copy of it or something. But
Oh yeah.
I found eye trouble here. Birth chart constants. Moon severely afflicted by Mars.
Right.
It says if Mars is prominent and afflicted severely, the moon may cause trouble with the eyes, even a strong harmonious aspect.
And look at the second one too, Mars in conjunct Saturn.
Yeah,
This is also-
right. Here is eye trouble. Now, this is Elbert Benjamin's dog, Duke. Okay. Can you guys see the book on what I'm looking at on the screen?
Yes, I
Nope.
love that picture. I think it's a Pomeranian.
Okay, this
They
is...
were friends.
Yes, the 2 dogs. Apparently, Duke, let's see, on April 6, 1939, eye trouble, Mars in conjunct Saturn. So that seems to, he indicates there that, well, maybe there's something to do with that. And Gosh, we've got a Mars in conjunct Saturn here, like within less than 1 degree, right? So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I don't know how astrologically sound what I'm getting ready to say is. This is Holly.
Okay.
But when I had the improvement, even though the eye disease is genetic, I was adopted, right? Kind of that moon in Pisces in the 12th house where I was taken care of by the institution because my mom was a young unmarried woman. So when I was diagnosed, then I went through an organization called Operation Identify that helped me find her. But when I had the healing with the Chinese acupuncture, Mars kind of the needle healing, and had improvement where my peripheral vision expanded some, and I got my color back. This was about 3 years ago. I, began to look into Chinese medicine and what he was treating, and in that system, the eyes are connected with the liver. And the emotion that is connected with the liver is anger. And Mars, kind of rules anger. And I think, being cut off from the mom in a sense, and had a lot of stomach pain, Mars and the moon, stomach pain, and was really colicky, and was unadoptable for several months because I was just screaming. So I just thought that was interesting that they treat the liver and the release of anger, and that seemed to, be the Western doctors wouldn't believe that that's possible, but I did get improvement. So I just can kind of see that when I look at the Mars Moon opposition.
Right. Yeah. No, that's 6th and 12th house. That's very interesting. I think the fact that Mars is the ruler of the personality and physical body, by virtue of being the ruler, you're having an Aries ascendant. Now, of course, Jupiter is a co-ruler because it's conjunct the ascendant. But the fact that Mars is in the 6th, rules the 1st, both relating to health and disease, and with that opposition to Moon and maybe even the inconjunct to Saturn. And the fact that there's a Yod or Yod is very interesting because, the Saturn could have the influence and Jupiter is conjunct the ascendant. So, so that I think that adds to it. How about anybody else out there got some comments?
Well, I think the significant thing, is obviously because it ties in with the Mars and the first house, as you just said, Paul. But it's very interesting, the inconjunct the Mars, Saturn, Mars, Jupiter, and Jupiter would connect up with the liver, wouldn't it?
Right, yeah. Jupiter, yeah. Exactly right, Michael. Jupiter rules the liver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when I had kind of a very kind of quick lessening of my vision and became legally blind and surrendered my driver's license and kind of gave up my Aries autonomy and independence and ability to be really mobile and just go, transiting Neptune was on my natal Saturn. So it kind of seemed to kind of dissolve my vision at that time, or it coincided with my vision dissolving. And it wasn't until I was able to, kind of surrender to it and not fight it anymore that I was able to kind of, sleep again and feel better. So I had to do that kind of Neptunian surrender.
Holly, you said on June 15th, 2008. What happened on that date?
Well, I had gone to visit my parents in Oklahoma. And they were in the middle of a move. And when I had gotten to Oklahoma, I'd had, right as I was renting the car rental, it was a little, I'd flown in and rented a car in the little hometown, and they pulled the car open for me and opened the door. And it was a low car, and I got in and pulled out, and I ran right into a fire hydrant. Because I sat so low and the door was open, I just did, I mean, it could have happened to anybody. It wasn't so much my vision. And it was right as they put it right by it as I pulled out. And I was just really upset about it, and I'd gotten kind of an upset stomach. And my parents were moving, and I feel like my dad was kind of angry that I wasn't doing enough for them. But there wasn't a lot I could do, and he was kind of out of sorts, and I'd gone over to their house, and I'd have a little camera there on the TV, and he comes up and he says, "Did you scratch our new table?" In a very kind of threatening, intimidating way. And I said, "Gosh, no, Dad, I've just been sitting here looking at these little pictures that I was wanting to show you guys." And he said, "Now I know you did. That wasn't like that." So a little bit late, I said, "You need, that probably happened during the move, and you need to report that, because they'll probably be able, you'll get some, they can probably pay for it to have that repaired." So later on, I was leaving out the next day, and later on, I told my mom, I said, "You guys should call. That table scratched, and I bet that happened during the move. Dad thinks I did it." And she says, "No, he knows better than that. You didn't, he knows, we talked about that earlier." So I felt like my dad was unable to feel like he could control me or express his stressful emotions, and he tends to be a little bit, kind of, will create a little crisis and get things up in a roar, and kind of a little bit of a hothead.
Okay,
So I got really upset, and I just kind of got really upset. I got back, I kind of did the Moon and Pisces thing and just denied it, and I got back home where I felt safe, and I got extremely angry. And that Neptune was on my Saturn, and I felt extremely disillusioned by my dad, and like for the first time in my life, I felt like I'd been played my whole life and manipulated, and I got really angry. So then again, it was the anger. And it reminded me of that thing, like anger is a liquid that does more damage to the vessel that contains it than it does to the object of its intent. And I feel like the anger and I don't know how to say it, I couldn't sleep, and I was really angry, and all of the emotions that I repressed and denied about my family came to the forefront, and I was like feeling. So that seemed to kind of all coincide and set it off together. That seemed to kind of trigger it, so to speak.
okay, well,
I
yeah, Michael, go ahead.
Well, hearing Holly speak, just then, thank you for that, Holly. Thank you. I'm looking immediately at that Moon-Mars opposition, the Moon ruling the 4th house, which in Hermetic astrology is related to the father. It's the 12th house is concealed things that are kept, hidden deep in the emotions. And you're looking at Mars in Virgo, and virtually with speaking your horoscope then, I can see that because it connects in Hermetic astrology, the father is very much connected to the 4th house. Mm-hmm. And so you've got that Mars-Moon opposition tied in with that emotional thing, because that Moon is in Pisces against a very critical, very Virgo-like, sorry to say that, but a very Virgo-like father.
Okay, let me say a few words here. Okay, can you guys see I've got Holly's progress chart up here for June 15, 2008. Okay, and there's some things that just really stick out. As I look around the progressed planets, the first thing that it just pops right out, I could go do a report, but I don't need to. natal Mars here at 21 Virgo has moved to 18 degrees Libra, 45 minutes. You see that? It's moved opposition Jupiter. And it's moved square the sun in the 4th house. So that, and as I look around at all the aspects, of course the sun has moved conjunct Uranus here. So, you know, there's a lot of things going on here. But that Mars, which is ruler of the personality and relates to the health and is in the 6th house and can get real angry, is opposition Jupiter in the 12th and is square the moon, and is even, you know, and not only that, but the ascendant is coming around. See, the ascendant, progressed ascendant is at 17 Gemini. Well, anytime you're dealing with a progressed ascendant, you can fudge it by a degree or two. If your chart is just off a few minutes, it will affect your progressed ascendant. So I would say, well, there's a good chance that the ascendant's in there and, you know, is getting close to, certainly very close to 1 degree of the Mars and the Jupiter aspect. And, you know, if it were at 18 degrees, it might be even coming around and affecting the Sun-Mars aspect there. So that's, you know, if you look at her progressed chart, what's going on in her life at that time, progressed for that date, is that Mars has moved, so it's opposition Jupiter and square the Sun, and plus the other things that are going on. But those are the big, heavy aspects that are in her chart at that time. So I think that, were you going to say something else, Michael?
Well, not really. I just thought I'd just say that bit, that's all.
Okay. Go ahead.
I wanted to just say, Michael,
Yeah.
I really liked how you said how Polly seemed to be talking her chart. That was kind of
That's,
neat. Because because you're looking at the chart and listening, and that was a nice way to say that. I just, you know, Paul, and I'm curious, like, because this is such a big change time. I, last couple of years, feel like just transits of Uranus, for whenever there's a big change, I just always have to see where it was in transit at that time, you know. And I know it's not going to be too far around in there, but it had me guessing where was Uranus, and it's just right at that time when she was.
Okay, well, let's look at that.
old.
We'll look at the transits, okay? Just look at transits.
Just to see where Uranus was.
Okay, well, Uranus is over here in the 12th house at 22 degrees.
Yeah.
So it hasn't quite gotten into that opposition yet. Although it's not quite, it's very close to being opposition to Mars, the natal Mars, but it's not quite there yet. But it's getting it's getting close.
When I saw by major progression that sun back there, you know, and then the sun's sort of like the father hitting by major progression onto a big change too.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
well, remember in the if we go back to the view, let me put just the majors up there. See, the sun has moved right on top of Uranus. See, that's a big thing. That progressed sun has moved right on top of Uranus, and so the sun being authority, relationships with men, and if it's in the 4th house, relating to the father, and of course you've got a Mars square natal sun, progressed Mars square natal sun, and progressed sun right on top of the natal Uranus.
Yes, and the 5th house kind of being about, in a sense, my inner child or childhood issues. And even though it was difficult getting angry and having that kind of repressed anger and ways that I had put on lapses about my family and kind of been able to, I was, far enough away that I could fully experience and freely experience my emotions and anger that I had buried. And in a way, the sun being on Uranus, Uranus is kind of like the awakener and the liberator. And even though the process involves some loss, in a way I was able to liberate myself to become more of my authentic self.
Yeah, that could be the sun in the fourth as well, the natal sun being triggered by the progressed Mars opposition Jupiter. Even though it's a difficult T-square, the outcome of it, if you use it constructively, Holly, could be coming into your own self on a level that you hadn't until that difficulty came up.
Yeah.
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 Okay, well, that's it.
And if that,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say one more thing. If I'm not mistaken, I don't have the transits right in front of me, but I'm thinking around that same time, transiting Uranus, around 2008, maybe 2009 or so. I'm thinking transiting Uranus was on the moon. I was still kind of processing it at that time. And
Well,
Pluto, I think transiting Pluto was, maybe it had just kind of, I don't know if it retrograded back after that, but it seemed like transiting Pluto was
well,
squaring the moon.
now we've got the transits up here for that same day, in 2008.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
and
But it actually took a year or two to kind of process through. I was a slow processor.
right. Well,
Yeah.
let's just bump it up a year and see what happens to that transiting Uranus.
Hi, this is really getting really out there, Paul, but in the transit,
Yeah. Go ahead.
Gemini and Sagittarius. Anyway, my old picture of the face, and of course the sun is the right eye and the moon is the left eye, but also the right eye has, in this old drawing, a sign of Sagittarius, and then the left eye has the sign of Gemini. I'll
Okay.
send you a copy of this old picture in the old book. That's
Yeah.
it.
It fits that what you're saying fits for me because those two things, the things that are represented by Gemini and the things that are represented by Sagittarius, are traveling, mobility, and learning. And oftentimes learning involves seeing, and we learn so visually, and we travel so visually. So what you're saying fits.
Yeah, and it's funny because I hadn't looked at that picture in years and years, but it came, I thought, Sagittarius, I think I see maybe, when you have all these signs and, I desire, I use, all of those. Is it Sagittarius, C-I-C, but I'm not sure.
Yes, sometimes I see or I know,
I
yes.
think I see the Sagittarius. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me, if I just progress these transits. So, yes. So, over that next year, you can see Uranus is now past the conjunction with the moon. So, over that year, transiting Uranus went over the moon. So,
Yes.
and over that period of time, actually, it went over, over that, say, the 2-year period, it went over the Mars, opposition to Mars, and then over the moon. So, I don't know. I'm just addressing what Renee's suggestion that, maybe transiting Uranus does such things. But anyway.
I know that, Paul,
Yeah?
I know that James didn't advocate transit being involved with a major progression so much. Is that correct? But he did, the significant stuff, like to connect Uranus with all the natal stuff. But or no, making any sense on
Well,
where
what
where
he-
to do the line
yeah,
for
he-
progressing transit?
He's, for progressing transits, the way he uses them is as triggers for, but only heavy transits like oppositions and conjunctions to the planets. He uses them as a trigger for when events happen during a major progressed aspect. But yes, he concentrates on major or secondary progressions as being the thing that rule events. Now, when it comes to the aspects in the sky affecting large populations, that's a different thing. That's a big deal. You know,
Right.
So
Uranus.
that transiting Uranus would trigger the Mars major progressions that were going on, and of course the Moon as well.
The Moon Mars opposition kind of got triggered, and in the sense that Moon in Pisces, it was true for me that what was painful and what I was unwilling to see about family
Yeah.
was I denied. You know what I mean? I had kind of deluded myself or buried it really deep within my unconscious mind, the 12th house.
Well,
And Uranus, even though it was destructive, it can be quite an illuminator and an awakener and liberation. I mean, wasn't it Prometheus that freed someone who had been kind of tied to the, or was freed from being bound to the rocks of Saturn? Right? I think Uranus.
Prometheus found himself bound to the rock.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, that was it.
For giving humans the fire, wasn't it? But
Oh, that's it. Well, maybe it's the fire part, or receiving the fire, the illumination of the fire, where it was kind of awakening and liberating.
Well, you can.
Bowers, wasn't he, with
It was about May of 2008 when, you know, your transiting Uranus goes over that natal Mars. You know, over some period of time there, you know, a couple of weeks or who knows, we'd have to do a report to find out all the details, but certainly
That's it.
trigger, you know,
Definitely.
yeah.
It's a hefty transit, isn't it? That's your
Right, that's pretty
Yeah.
heavy transit. Okay,
Yeah. Great.
that's a great story, Holly, and that's very revealing in the chart. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me. It's
So I
really
have a
interesting.
question
Yeah.
based on Zane here.
Okay.
When you have Mars opposed the Moon, those are the two antidotes for each other. So what kind of thought cell treatment
Your entry is not valid.
do you use when the two planets that are alchemical antidotes to each other are involved in the opposition?
That's a good question, Laura. Now, will you tell us the answer?
Well, we did notice that there was a sextile and trine to Mars and the Moon. Did we not?
Yeah.
What
Well,
in
there's
the natal chart?
in the
there's-
natal chart here. There's
Jupiter is sextile, and
the sun.
no, that makes it still in
Here, the
conjunct
sun
Mars.
down here, actually in the fourth house,
Oh,
is
Where?
drains this opposition. See, the sun down here in the fourth
Yeah, oh,
house
there it is.
sextile Mars and trine Moon. It drains that
Yeah,
opposition.
sextile,
So,
yeah. I've
so-
always thought drains is a very odd way to say it.
well, I don't come up with a better word. I'd love to have a better
Well,
word.
it
What-
provides a more
Mitigates?
harmonious, yeah.
Yeah,
way
it
to-
drains off the negativity, or it provides a more harmonious thing. Right.
Uh-huh.
It makes that sun, you know, really.
Important there. And
Yeah,
it
very
is
important
conjunct
there.
Mercury, so
Now,
both can be used in the process.
go ahead.
if you have this opposition of the Mars and the Moon, well, you have to energize your lunar qualities, your moon qualities, and you have to soften up your Mars harshness. It's sort of one and the same. When you apply antidotes to opposing planets, they're spelling it out real clear, right?
They're the natural antidotes to each other. Moon and
Yeah, I think
Mars.
Albert
So-
would say that you would have to use conversion. You can't use antidotes because they are the two planets of antidotes.
Yeah.
So it's a case of using conversion. So in other words, you're using that energy, trying to channel it in a positive way.
So you bring,
Um,
you bring forth the constructive aspects of the
Yeah.
Mars energy. In fact, he talks about Mars-Moon complementarity being constructively devoting your energies to helping the helpless, the hungry, the needy, the infirm, etc. So if you devote your energy to universal welfare in that way by helping those who can't help themselves, you're really bringing forth the beautiful marriage between Mars and the Moon.
And they are in the 6th and 12th houses, which is the houses of service and also, hospitals.
That's right. That's right. So it could even be institutionalized as service in some sort of hospital setting or old people's homes or something like that.
It's even why Mars and the Moon are the planets involved in the major aspects around eye trouble, because when you have eye trouble, you are needing extra help
Yeah.
for people to look after you.
Right.
It's such a beautiful.
Did I interrupt you, Michael?
Oh, no, sorry. I probably interrupted you, actually.
No, I just I felt like I jumped in again.
A lot of
No.
a lot of the eye problems are, of course, what Holly's is a little different, but I think the reason the Mars and the Moon, especially the Mars, is involved is because a big thing with the eyes is the muscles in the eyes, and when they are deformed, weakened, they go through changes as you get older. Those muscles do. In fact, I've heard so many times, I've heard a number of times and have read that if people would just do eye exercises, that you can greatly improve your sight.
That's right.
And
Tibetan exercise.
Yeah, all you have to do, and I've tried it and I've just never been able to stick with it because my distance vision isn't very good. But, if every day you spend 15 minutes,
I have an anecdote about that.
do you?
I one time decided that I needed to do yoga more diligently on a daily basis, and I gave myself a well-rounded yoga routine that I could do in 45 minutes. And at the end of it, included looking as far to the right, a straight line to the right as I could, and holding that until my eyes started to vibrate, my muscles got tired, and then I go to the left, and then I go up diagonally to the right, down diagonally left, and vice versa. And I did not expect to notice any difference, but 2 weeks later I started realizing I am seeing so much more clearly.
Right. I've heard those anecdotes.
Yeah,
Quite a few
there's
times.
a lot to
Yeah.
what
And
you're
I've
saying.
read.
Yoga is full of like eye exercises like that.
Yeah.
There was a doctor in I believe the early 1900s named Dr. William Bates,
Yeah, he's
who
famous.
had a clinic called the Bates Method, and so I do the exercises, and toning is very important, and I do full spectrum light therapy,
Great.
and there's
What about
and
nutritional support? You take lutein
Yes.
and
Yes, lutein and zeaxanthin and vitamin A
Right.
and rutin and blueberries and
Good.
turmeric and yeah.
yeah.
So
Good there.
what was so I feel like that for most until I was so it's almost like with that Moon Mars opposition, I wasn't living the Mars part. I was so far living my Moon in Pisces, kind of soft and gentle and very self-sacrificing and not willing to see harshness, and very much fearing Saturn's Moon on Mars, fearing to express anger. you know, and so I was just living kind of on that moon in Pisces side. And then that, in a way, was like a pendulum that had been held to one side for too long. When I got in touch with my anger, I got really angry, and I just decided I'm going to let myself be angry, and I wrote angry rat, you know, and I just kind of let it out. And I mean, it feels like it's kind of come back more into the middle now, where I'm able to stand up for myself and, you know, fight for myself when my toes are getting stepped on in a balanced way. Where before I was unable to do that.
Okay,
Holly,
let's go ahead.
never mind.
Go ahead, Renee.
I was just saying, you mentioned a date. Just what year were you born?
1963, July 11th.
Okay. Right on. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that, Holly. That was great.
Thank
Let's
Thank you.
Michael. I'm going to put up Jenny's chart. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So there it is. Does that look right? It looked like your
I recognize that.
PDF file. I bet you have gone over this chart.
Oh,
A lot.
tell me about it.
Yeah.
A lot. Right, you want me to start talking through this? You
Yeah.
want me to keep off being astrological, but more talking about events? Is that right?
Well, let's start that way, and you know, if something's obvious, and
Yeah.
we'll see. But you know, and if it's not, we'll just have to say, well, I don't know. You'll have to tell us what it is.
Okay. Well, this is the chart of my wife Jennifer, or Jenny, and obviously I've spent more time other than my own chart studying this chart. I find it very interesting apart from anything else. I'll go for, Jenny, my wife, suffers from what is called COPD, which is an umbrella term for what's called chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Basically, it's an umbrella term, and in fact, it's the two main diseases are bronchitis, chronic bronchitis, and emphysema. My wife suffers from emphysema on both lungs. It affects 5% of the population. About 329 million people in the world suffer from this COPD. She's very, very sensitive, very hypersensitive person. She actually has quite developed feeling ESP, and I think she could become quite a good psychic if she decided to work on that. But apart from that, she's very sensitive to smells. I think there's only one smell that she can actually survive on. I mean, it affects her really badly, so she's very sensitive to smells. And
Is her
in
name
about
Jenny Salter?
2007, but it's actually 2009 that she was rushed to hospital with a collapsed lung, and she nearly lost her life then. But she went to a Royal Brompton Hospital in London, specialist in lung disease, and just before Christmas she came home, and I've been caring for her ever since then. That's 2009. She's on oxygen 24/7, and she's been in and out of hospital ever since then. She's had pneumonia 3 times. But she's a fighter. She always seems to bounce back, and she's got tremendous resistance to all this. So that's basically the story, really.
Okay.
Was that when it presented, the collapsed lung incident? Would that be when you would progress the chart for? Was that when it first became real apparent that she had this disease, Michael?
Well, she was diagnosed with it early in 2001, but it wasn't until 2009 that it became really, huge. I mean, basically, she was rushed to hospital, and everything else. So 2009, in fact, the exact date was October 30th, 2009. She was rushed to hospital with a collapsed lung, and it was diagnosed that she had this very advanced emphysema, and at that particular time, what had happened was that major progressed Venus was squaring with Saturn. Progressed ascendant was in opposition to Venus. There was a number of other aspects going on.
Right here.
So there was a lot of energy going on to the Sun, exact Sun-Saturn opposition, actually.
Okay, well,
Currently, I'm sorry.
no, I was just going to say, before we get further into the story, and let's look at our progressions in that 2008-2009 time period. Has anybody out there got any comments on, like Alice Marie? I haven't heard a word from you. You're on mute. Alice Marie fell asleep. Or can you unmute yourself? Or if you're having trouble, Alice Marie, type something in chat or ask a question and I'll help you fix it. Okay, somebody else was going to comment. Who was it? Renee.
Michael, did you mention it? Did you mention bronchitis at the beginning of your...
Yeah, I was saying, the reason I mentioned bronchitis was that the COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, it's an umbrella term, and bronchitis is one of those which it covers, but she has emphysema. Now, bronchitis, in stellar healing, bronchitis is mentioned, but unfortunately, there was no research on emphysema. I don't think they knew what it was at this.
I know because I have my stellar healing book right here in front of me, and I can't find emphysema in there, and I can't find anything on lungs. But on bronchitis, it does say afflicted Mercury, and I saw the Mercury opposition, the ascendant right away.
Right.
Yes, that's right. You've got... Go on, sorry.
Well, I was going to say what you were going to say, Michael, which is that, Gemini typically rules the lungs. And basically what you have here, I know everybody's already seen this, you've got these two oppositions to the first house. You got this heavy-duty Sun opposition Saturn in the first, and then Mercury sitting there, opposition Neptune and the ascendant. And, when you started talking and said bronchitis, it occurred to me, well, hey, Mercury opposition the ascendant and the ruler of the first house and all that has got to be, along with the Sun opposition Saturn, which brings a weakness in the health.
Ruler in the first house.
And the Neptune, the bronchitis, the lungs being ruled by Gemini, and the ruler is Mercury, and it's hooked up with Neptune, which rules mucus. And rules the body, the lymphatic system, and that heavy mucus sticky in our bodies, in our lungs. That's Neptune showing up.
Yeah.
It does. And I would think also chemicals as well. And I think, in her particular case, because she was working with chemicals,
Neptune is poisoning. Chemical poisoning would be Neptune. Yeah, chemical poisoning would be associated with Neptune.
Yeah. Laura, say that.
I think they heard. Did you hear? Chemical poisoning would be associated with Neptune.
Right. Yes. Definitely.
I just wanted to add that in the Stellar Healing book that it did have exactly what you said, Paul. For bronchitis, you'll have the heavy aspects, the Sun and Saturn, and then also for pleurisy, Neptune and Mercury, and then you've got Mars in the third house, which is Gemini, ruler of the lungs. So some of those things.
Yeah. She does seem, according to what Zane's got in Stellar Healing. I'd say these
Bronchitis is in
pretty classic.
Pleurisy and pneumonia.
Pretty classic predispositions here. And now we can look at her progressions. Also, Michael, noticed that, of course, you know this, is that grand trine that she has to Neptune,
Yes.
between the moon and Jupiter up there. And then, of course, she's got Sun in Taurus, okay, the first decadent of Taurus. Okay, and if you go read that decadent, well, what I'm referring to is her psychic abilities.
Ah, okay.
You
And that's-
mentioned that
yeah.
you thought she had psychic abilities, and Sun in that first
She
decadent,
does very have natural psychology.
first decadent of Taurus, plus that grand trine to Neptune would
There, yeah.
would do that for sure.
Yeah, she might be able to do intellectual ESP as well as feeling ESP.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. So, what? Why don't we just real quick? Let me see if I can. The period of time. If we go 2008, I'm just going to change the years here. I'm going to do a progression report 2009. Those were the years, right, Michael? Around 2008, 2009?
Hello, Michael?
Did he get muted? No, he's not muted. He may have had to step away. Well, I'll just do a progression report for that time, but I'll filter this so we don't have to see, but just any heavy aspects. And so what do we have?
Do we want to ignore outer planet even though they're long-term aspects?
Well, they're so long term.
Yeah, but here we're dealing with Neptune and outer planets.
Well, look at this. Here Mercury goes conjunct Uranus. Mercury is a key to this thing.
Yeah.
Okay, from 2007 to 2013, it's a fairly long-term aspect. So that's a heavy-duty conjunction. The ascendant's opposition Venus, Mars, it's Jupiter trine Saturn. I guess you've got this basic, the natal Saturn and Sun opposition triggered by the Venus square Saturn. Well, for what it's worth, Michael could probably tell us a lot more about this. He's, I'm sure, looked at this in great depth. But so what that means is that if we look again at the
When was the collapsed one?
it was in 2008, I think he said. So we've got this chart, or did he say 2009? I think he said 2009. It started in 2008, and then in 2009 she went to the hospital.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so that was what did we say? The progressed Mercury was.
Opposite Uranus?
No, it was conjunction. Oh,
Conjunction.
it goes conjunction.
There, yeah.
It goes conjunction
Uranus,
Uranus up here. So that's the. Now, of course, it's gone all of this way here. It's gone conjunction the Sun, conjunction Venus, conjunction Jupiter, and it's gone past the Sun, progressed Jupiter, and then when it gets conjunction Uranus, she has this. This thing. So there's Uranus again, Renee.
Yeah.
That's progressed Uranus, but we could look at the trances too. Okay, go ahead, Michael.
Right. Thanks. The date obviously etched on my brain is October 30th, 2009. That was, a bit of a nightmare, I have to say, that when Jenny was rushed to hospital with a collapsed lung. so that is an interesting time period if you want to look at major progressions. Currently, she has actually the major progressed Sun in opposition to Mars. She has been in twice, first in January, and then a couple of weeks ago she was in there for a week, and she had blood problems, a high carbon dioxide blood gases causing toxins in her blood during that period. So
Wow.
we have actually been able to address by turning down her oxygen to a lower level, because apparently it's okay giving somebody oxygen, but they have to breathe out the carbon dioxide, and if they're unable to do that, you've got a problem. So
Yeah.
that's been the major thing.
Paul, is this outer ring that you put on this chart, on Jenny's chart? Is this a transit or progress?
These are the progress. These are the secondary progressions.
Okay.
And
So Mercury, that health sign, just kind of like my mind, we were talking earlier about Uranus, and then that Mercury came to her natal Uranus.
right. And that's the big aspect that seems to start all this off, is the Mercury, as you can see, is now within orb. And is actually, if you look at the progression report, the Mercury conjunct right here, conjunct Uranus, starts in mid 2007 and has gone on for a long time.
That's the one, yeah, I know, that's the big one.
That's
and
the
I'll
big-
tell you, can I add something that perhaps I haven't spoken about? One of the things about her disease is acute anxiety and nervousness and apprehension. And it's almost as debilitating as the actual having the lung problem, that she suffers from a huge anxiety and nervousness.
And that, I'm not, I haven't studied stellar healing, and I'm just through course 1, but I don't know but I always see Saturn as being, kind of tan and panic.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
that fear and anxiety associated with like the physical health of the sun.
Yes, I think that is probably one of the main things that gone a little now. Where's it gone? Is that Saturn-Sun opposition in the first house?
Yeah.
In these angles, and you're right. The safety urges, the safety thought cells. That's Saturn, and it's in a fixed sign of Scorpio as well.
Right.
So yeah, it's
Okay.
chronic illnesses.
Right. Okay. Well, that's great.
But
I mean, that's another fascinating medical story. I mean, it's amazing. We've got about 10 more minutes here, and I guess what I'd like to do is, Renee, why don't you give us a little synopsis of what you're going to talk about, and then maybe what we'll do is we'll take it up next week. We'll start there next week. But I'm going to close this. You sent in let's see, a C chart, an E chart, a J chart, a JM, and a W. So tell us about what you've got in mind here.
This is great because I need help on what to do with these charts. I have 5 charts, but they're really, they're 2 sets of identical twins. And so, there's 3 different definite health issues that belong to the 5 charts. So one Is everything okay? Because I hear some stuff.
Yeah. Why doesn't everybody else mute themselves or it just went away? I don't know what it was, but.
Okay, yes, it did. So there's two sort of ideas, and they're kind of out there. One idea is there's 3 diagnoses of the 5 charts. They are profound deafness, selective mutism, and a retina eye cancer.
Okay, let's take
And so
one pair. What's one pair of identical twins? Or can we pick one?
C and E.
C and E.
C and E
C.
are identical twin girls.
Charlie
Born a half-
Easy, right? Okay.
They're born a half an hour apart. I find their charts absolutely fascinating with all those planets in Sagittarius. And I guess one idea, it's not specifically around health and vitality, but it's around identical twins and how that short time between their births can make them such individuals from each other. And, you know, I guess that Scorpio just wanted to dig deep, you know, even though, although these charts should be pretty accurate, even though they're right on the half an hour mark, which makes us dubious about their accuracy. You know, you're rounding it off to the half hour or
right.
something. But I think the source is pretty certain, and I know them. So what, you know, like, that's one idea of looking at the 2 different sets of identical twins and what happens in their charts in between. And the other is, I don't know if you want to just go ahead and know which chart belongs to which, or to try and give us should we do that, Paul? What
Yeah,
do you do
sure.
with these charts?
Actually, was that?
Shall I tell you right now what?
Yeah, sure. Tell it. I've got them both up, but actually, you don't really need to see
Okay.
both because they're identical, right?
Except for the house.
Huh?
They're identical girl twins, but just look.
There's a house.
A little bit of,
The Jupiter and
I know them as individuals. Look how closer Eve's chart, Eve's Saturn is to her MC. Because
This
these
is
are the
Eve.
selectively mute. These are the selectively mute. This means they don't speak, but to their parents.
Yeah. So,
7 years old, and it's you mentioned fear and anxiety, Michael. If you can imagine, if you're not familiar with what selectively mute is, it means you're so fearful you cannot speak, and that's what their mental state is around
wow.
anyone they don't have a deep relationship with.
So both of them are presenting the same way?
Oh yes,
And
but they're.
go ahead.
Can you guess which one is a little bit less full of anxiety?
C.
Well,
Yes. Correct.
E's got, you know, the Saturn up there more closely conjunct the MC.
That's why I guess she'd already clued us into that too.
Right. So E's the worst, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Worst
Yeah.
condition.
Just a little bit more fearful, and goes more a little bit more distant, and
I can't see. I'm thinking that the chart on the left. I don't know which one that is. Oh, I guess this is the one that's having a little bit more difficult time. Her Neptune is in the 3rd house of communication, where the chart on the right, it's moved over it's moved over to the 4th house.
Across the IC. You know,
That's
looking at
the
these,
little nitpicky, small, like in identical twins, one planet, if the time of birth they're accurate, one planet moves into a different house. Or, something
yeah,
like
well,
that.
Jupiter also and Venus are in different houses respectively. But I don't know why I'm getting this, but Neptune very close to the IC, straddling one side and the other of it for the two of them. It seems like there may be some sort of unconscious agreement between them. You know, their selective mutism.
But that would go with any set of identical twins or just twins. That
Could be, but because Neptune's involved, I was just thinking of.
And
one I see here in my notes. I haven't had time. I didn't think I would come up tonight either. I realized that with that half an hour difference, the ascendant aspect to the moon is
Yeah, let's see, the ascendant aspect to the moon,
Is that a
Let's
semi-square?
28, 23,
Semi-square.
Scorpio, Sagittarius. Yeah, it's close to being a sesqui square, but it's 23. It's about 4 degrees off on the E chart on the left, and it's 18. It's not, that aspect doesn't exist on the C chart on the right. But I don't know if it's in order on the E chart.
right.
We can look here.
I'm trying.
Ascendant moon. Let's see. Ascendant.
On their Astrodyne reports, I haven't looked at these for a long while, Paul, but on their Astrodyne report,
Yeah. Semi-square.
E's Mercury is the most harmonious. And the same on C's chart. But
but it is conjunct.
for E's chart, the sun is the most harmonious. It's interesting to look at when you're looking at identical twin charts that are only half an hour apart. The Astrodyne reports are really quite fascinating, Paul, because looking at those little numbers, like, wow, there's one little spot where there's a big change.
Right. Yeah. No,
And
that's right.
I guess in my notes, on C's chart, Mercury is the most harmonious, Venus is the second harmonious, the Sun is the third harmonious. On E's chart, Mercury is again the most harmonious, and yet it's the communication that they struggle with the most, which is
Right.
interesting. The Sun is second and Venus is third.
Now, if we look at
And
If
yeah,
we-
when I
power,
it,
did you look at power? Look at power.
yes, okay.
The Saturn is the most prominent one in E's chart, and in C's chart, it's Mercury. There's quite a bit of difference.
Yeah.
There's a lot of difference.
And it much less unharmonious
And-
than E's.
Right, and
So Saturn is a.
yeah, see,
Go ahead.
Well, again, I'm just haven't studied as much as you guys have saying at all, so this may not fit. But Mercury, the planet, I can't see the degrees exactly, but Mercury looks very close to Pluto, and Mercury being the sign of the planet of communication, and Pluto can sometimes kind of kill off what it touches, or move it underground, or what may be a way of Plutonian kind of control.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that, but that's an interesting comment. I'm trying to figure out what it seems like such a serious debility. I'm trying to figure out where that is in the chart, other than the Saturn is, of course, so prominent, especially on the E chart. You know, it just sticks out like a sore thumb, and of course, it is the dominant planet, and it's also in Leo. That's a bad place. You know, Saturn is at home in Aquarius, and it's
in debility.
But of course, So I've never had a speech impediment, but I've always felt like a lot of times had difficulty talking, sometimes more than others. I have Saturn and Mercury, conjunct Mercury in Leo. And of course, Mercury is exalted in Aquarius and Saturn is at home in Aquarius. So they're in the opposite signs that they ought to be. Huh?
So they're not in a happy place.
They're not in a happy place.
You speak amazingly well, considering
Yeah.
Paul.
Well, I've worked at it, but so you know, yeah, it's very interesting that Saturn. But you know, you'd think that it would be a Mercury thing, right? Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be a Mercury thing? And of course, Mercury is down there conjunct Mars, conjunct Pluto, probably conjunct the Moon,
Yeah.
probably conjunct Sun.
Yeah.
You know, it makes all these aspects.
Yeah, it's a loose stellium there. All
Yeah, it's a stellium, and also, you know, Renee, that's a very unusual disease, or I don't know what mental, whatever you call it. What do you call it?
Select mutism, she was saying.
Selective mutism.
Renee,
I've never
did you
heard of
say
it
They had
before.
some hearing difficulty as well.
Again, if we get through with Renee's stuff again next week, I'd like to sign off now because I can't talk anymore. So okay, well let's sign off now, and then next week we'll take up where we left off, and then if there's not any more medical stuff, we'll move on to the next subject. But I would like, you know, you guys, this is the model I would like to use for this class, and that model is. And of course, it's easy when it's medical stuff, but, you know, if you guys can come up with interesting charts that we can talk about, and you guys can do more of the talking instead of me, that makes my life a whole lot easier.
I noticed one thing here. All these Sagittarius planets from Mercury on, up through the Sun,
Yeah.
are actually trine Saturn.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I noticed that too.
And then you have the opposition with Neptune.
Yeah.
Which makes me
It's a
wonder
very-
if they're not, you know, like these two in their bedroom having long conversations in the middle of the night.
Their secret language.
Yeah.
Laura, they talk to each other,
Okay.
not amongst other people they're not comfortable with.
Uh-huh.
You realize what the syndrome really is to realize that there's the fear of, like, you have to remember a time when you could not speak.
Uh-huh.
And go to that feeling to realize what they're experiencing because it's not a game. It's
Did,
not a
did they have a severe trauma at, at some point in their verbal development?
That if you research the syndrome of selective mutism, it probably in child development it begins with right away when you're acquiring language. You will at that time reserve your language to only those people you have a very strong relationship with, like
Right,
for if you have a mom and dad, if you're lucky enough to have both
right.
parents, usually then, and of course this is unique because they have each other as twins, so that provides a lot more freedom than if they were only child or.
It's funny, I just watched a movie the other night with Whoopi Goldberg, and Ray Liotta plays the widowed father of this mute little girl, and Whoopi Goldberg comes into their life and wins the heart of the little girl, and when she starts feeling safe, she can then start communicating again. It was very dear, and it's sort of ironic that I just happened to see that like within 48 hours of hearing you converse about them.
Because that would be a case of selective
It
mutism.
was, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And exactly what Renee's describing, when trust and safety started getting developed was when she broke through and could then communicate.
Right.
Would it be, would seeing the movie for the girls, I don't know if it's age appropriate.
I think
for
it would be
age 7,
wonderful.
Would it be therapeutic? Oh,
Yes.
what
It's that kind of heart-opening movie.
Whoopi Goldberg?
Whoopi Goldberg and Ray Liotta plays he's usually a bad guy in movies, but this one, he's a very dear, caring father.
Is it called Carmela?
Yes,
Carmela.
it's not Carmela, it's
Karina.
Karina.
That's it, yeah.
That's it.
That's the name
I
of it.
highly recommend it's showing it to the girls too. Yeah.
And how do you spell that?
Karina. That was a
Yes,
song.
Corina, yeah. Okay,
That's the name of the movie.
Yeah.
we're gonna,
So much.
Sure.
okay.
Is there any way to look at Uranus in this? Uranus is squaring Mercury and Mars, and
Yeah,
also Jupiter, and Uranus is in the sign of Pisces, Neptune in the third house of communications and opposing Saturn. So I was wondering if there was some kind of change in their home life also because Uranus is there in the fourth house. And,
that's-
and it's squaring
Change brought about
all
by
of those
humans.
planets.
yes, that's very, Glenn, that was Glenda, right?
Yes.
That's I think that's very interesting comments. I think that's,
I wonder about the father, if there's some change in the home or the father, because it's squaring all of their little planets there, and the Mercury, the Mars, the Jupiter, and wondering if, there could have been some drastic change with the father or the home, or
Yeah.
some kind of obstacle there between there's so many planets they're squaring that
Right.
Uranus.
yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Renee, you might want to look into that and see if there's
See if
anything
the
to
father's a
that.
loose cannon.
Well, I have to say, I know they have incredibly strong, absolutely beautiful relationships with their parents, and that is the most secure thing in their life. So I have to go to that fourth house association with psychism. They seem to communicate, so profoundly on magical feeling I get in their presence. And that Uranus in the fourth house, there's no trouble, or I don't think they've been through too many changes, because their world is with their parents.
Have they had any domestic help in the
And so
home?
that world, even though, pardon me?
Did they have any domestic help in the home that might have been loose cannonish for them?
No.
Okay.
They're both very educated, very professional in a beautiful field. Like my
Great.
parent is a doctor, and my parent is very artistic, and they've got the best situation in their home that they could have. So I do notice in that movement of Neptune moving into the fourth house that I reflected on, but right now I can't. It's really hard to put words to it, because isn't astrology all about finding the right vocabulary to express our human characters? And that's I'll work on that for next week.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see their parents' charts too.
Right. Okay, let's
Probably highly telepathic.
let's sign off here.
Yeah.
Let's sign off here. I'm going to send you guys an email with some homework, okay? For next time. Homework, yeah.
Okay.
Everybody has homework. So with the idea, because you guys are going to do all the delineations from now on. You know, it's amazing. We have a group here that is really very knowledgeable.
Yeah, it's really fun to
So we
listen to
really
you
need
guys.
everybody, and we'll even let Alice Marie talk next time. And Alice Marie knows a lot of astrology. So we all are well, educated, and so we need to move around with everybody talking and doing some analysis, and we'll all learn something. I get to learn something. So, okay, this was a great class. Really enjoyed it. So, I'm so glad. You know what? Next week I have a board meeting next week at this time. I'm glad. I almost forgot. I mean, Peg reminded me today, and that I have a board meeting, and Peg's gone now, but so
The 17th.
it's the 17th.
No class on the 17th?
So we can't have a class next
Moon's
week.
in Sagittarius for your board meeting.
Yeah, that'll be good. So it's going to be 2 weeks. But you know, if we can get this class going where I'm not doing all the work, we can just keep it going. You know, we can keep going on things.
Wonderful.
We can just keep going. You know, with everybody coming up with different.
Oh, wow.
No, we had the police outside, so we. Of course, we're in. We're 1 block from the university, so this is the student ghetto that we're in here in Albuquerque.
Hey, you guys are where Breaking Bad was filmed.
That's right.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, that
And where
that's
they're about to turn over our police force to the feds.
yeah, really. Yeah, this is a bad place, I'll tell you. Okay,
It is not.
so really.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Good night, everybody.